I should have kept my mouth shut. It was late, the summer air heavy, and I was leaning on the wooden fence that divided my yard from hers. She stood on the other side with a glass of wine, her blonde hair falling loosely over her shoulders, her eyes carrying that restless glow I had learned to fear. She was my neighbor, beautiful, older, married. And I was the stupid guy who thought a careless joke wouldn't matter. "So why do you put up with him?" I chuckled. "Leave him already." I said it like a joke, light and playful. But the way her smile froze, the way her gaze held me longer than it should have, made my chest tighten. She didn't laugh. She just stared as though I had dared to speak something she had buried deep. Then slowly she turned and walked back to her house without another word. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her expression again. Had I crossed a line? Did I just ruin everything? The next day, just as the clock struck 9, I heard it. 3 soft knocks at my door. My heart dropped. I opened it and there she was. No wine glass this time. Just her standing in the dim light of the hallway. Lips parted, eyes sharp, almost trembling with something I couldn't name. "Can I come in?" she whispered. I stepped aside before I could think. She brushed past me, her perfume warm and familiar, filling the room until I could barely breathe. She sat at my table like she owned the space, crossing her legs slowly, deliberately, her gaze locked on mine. So she began, her voice calm, too calm. "About last night." My throat went dry. "It was just a joke, was it?" she asked, tilting her head. The corner of her lips curved. But it wasn't a smile. It was something far more dangerous. Silence stretched between us. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator. And then, without warning, she leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes searching mine. Her hand was so close to mine, I could feel the heat radiating. One small movement and we'd be touching. One tiny mistake and there would be no way back. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered, almost like a confession. "Why not?" I forced out, though my pulse was hammering. Her eyes darkened. "Because I might listen." The words dropped like a spark into gasoline. The air thickened. My body tensed, every instinct screaming to lean closer. She didn't move away. She just watched me, daring me, testing if I'd be reckless enough. I swear the world stopped in that moment. Her breath, my silence, the forbidden gravity pulling us together. And then, just as I thought she'd close the distance, she stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor, shattering the spell. She walked to the door, her heels clicking softly, and I thought she was leaving, but she paused at the threshold. One hand on the frame, her back still to me. "You think you know me," she said quietly. "You don't." Then she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving me in a silence that felt louder than any storm. My hands trembled. My mind screamed. That was no ordinary visit. That was the beginning of something dangerous, something I had no control over. And I realized with a sinking feeling that the joke I made last night wasn't a joke anymore. I told myself she wouldn't come back. That what happened last night. The silence, the whisper, the way she looked at me was nothing more than a strange moment blown out of proportion. But I was wrong. By the end of the week, she had knocked on my door 3 more times, each time with a different excuse. "Do you have sugar? My internet's down. Can I check my email here? I just needed some air. Do you mind if I sit?" She was turning my apartment into her second home, and I let her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, she showed up again. This time, she didn't bring an excuse, just a faint smile, a bottle of wine, and eyes that seemed more tired than usual. She sat at my table like always, but when she reached for the glass, I noticed a thin scratch on her wrist. "What happened?" I asked. Her hand froze. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, too quickly, she pulled her sleeve down. "Nothing, just the garden." But I knew it wasn't the garden. I wanted to ask more, press her, but the way she avoided my gaze told me to let it go. Instead, we drank. We talked about small things, neighbors, the weather, music. But underneath every laugh was tension. When our hands brushed, reaching for the same glass, It was as though the room went still. She didn't pull away this time. Neither did I. Our eyes locked, and in that suspended second, I thought, this is it. This is the moment. But then she laughed nervously, shifting back, creating space. Careful, she murmured. Someone might think you're serious. Her words stung because I was serious. Later, as she stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I didn't need to see. Her smile vanished. Her body tensed. She silenced the call, but her fingers trembled. She noticed me watching and forced a smirk. My husband, she whispered. He doesn't like when I'm out. I swallowed hard. Then why are you here? She turned, her silhouette framed by the glow from the street outside. Because here I can breathe. The way she said it nearly broke me. We stood there in silence. The kind of silence that hummed with everything unsaid. She moved closer, just close enough for me to smell her perfume, for me to feel the warmth of her skin. My pulse raced. She tilted her head slightly, as if daring me, as if waiting for me to cross the line. And I almost did. My hand lifted halfway, trembling in the air, about to touch her cheek. She didn't step back. Her eyes fluttered shut for a fraction of a second, like she wanted it, like she was ready. Then her phone buzzed again. Loud, sharp, shattering the moment. She opened her eyes, stepped back, and the wall between us slammed shut. I should go, she whispered, her voice barely steady. At the door, she lingered, her hand resting on the frame the same way she had the first night. You shouldn't let me stay so long, she said without turning. It's dangerous. And then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of wine and perfume. And me standing there, my hands still aching from the touch that almost happened. I knew then she wasn't just my neighbor. She was a secret waiting to explode. I didn't expect her that night. The sky was restless, clouds drifting over a pale moon. The kind of evening that made the air feel heavy with secrets. I was on the couch, half distracted by the hum of the TV. When I heard it, those 3 familiar knocks, my pulse jumped. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, she stood there. No excuses this time. No borrowed sugar, no nervous laugh. Just her in a simple dress that clung to her figure. Eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite read. Is he home? I asked before I could stop myself. She shook her head. He's away. Business trip. The words hung between us. Electric, dangerous. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Her heels soft against my floor. I closed the door, my throat dry. We sat at the table like always, but the atmosphere was different, heavier. She played with the rim of her glass, her fingers trembling slightly. You know, she said quietly, when you joked about me leaving him, couldn't sleep that night. I kept wondering what it would feel like to actually do it. My chest tightened, and she lifted her eyes, and the look she gave me nearly destroyed me. And now I can't stop thinking about it. The silence after that was unbearable. The space between us felt like a tight rope. And every second I thought we'd fall. My hand brushed against hers on the table. She didn't move away. Slowly, cautiously, I let my fingers rest against hers. Her breath caught, but she didn't pull back. Do you know what you're doing? She whispered. No, I admitted. But I don't want you to leave. Her lips parted, her eyes searching mine. And for one endless moment, it felt like the universe held its breath. She leaned closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her skin, the faint trace of wine on her breath. My heart hammered against my ribs. If I leaned forward even an inch, it would all change. But just as our lips were a breath away, she pulled back sharply, almost violently, as if burned. She stood up, pushing her chair away, pacing to the window. This is wrong, she whispered, clutching her arms. You don't understand if he ever found out. Her voice cracked, and I saw something I hadn't before. Fear. Not of being judged, not of gossip, but of him. Of her husband. I wanted to go to her to take her hand, to tell her she was safe with me. But I stayed frozen, every nerve on fire from the closeness we almost shared. Finally, she turned, her eyes shimmering in the dim light. You make me feel alive, she said, her voice trembling. And that terrifies me. Before I could answer, she rushed to the door. I followed, desperate, but she was already pulling it open. At the threshold, she stopped, her hand gripping the frame, her body tense. If I stay 1 minute longer, she said, her voice breaking, I'll cross a line I can never come back from. And then she was gone, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her words and the ghost of a touch that never quite happened. I leaned against the door, shaking, knowing she was right. We were standing at the edge of something forbidden, something dangerous. But the worst part, I wanted to fall. That night, I heard shouting through the walls, her voice shaken, pleading, his voice sharp, angry, cutting through the quiet street. I froze by my window, the curtain half pulled back, watching shadows move in her house. Then silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Minutes later, I heard it. 3 soft knocks. My chest tightened. When I opened the door, she was standing there in the dark, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked with tears. She didn't say a word, just looked at me like I was the only safe place she had left. I stepped aside. She walked in, shoulders trembling, clutching her coat around her as if she was trying to hold herself together. "Can I stay?" she whispered. Her voice was so fragile. I almost didn't recognize it. I nodded. No questions, no hesitation. She sank onto my couch, burying her face in her hands. For a long while, neither of us spoke. I just sat near her close enough that she knew I was there far enough that I didn't scare her away. Eventually, she lifted her head. Her eyes glistened, her voice breaking. "He thinks I belong to him. Every step I take, he watches. Every word I say, he twists. And tonight, I thought he might." She cut herself off, swallowing hard. I couldn't stay there. My hands clenched into fists. Anger burned in me, but stronger than that was the urge to pull her close to protect her. Still, I stayed still. Then quietly, she leaned into me. Her head rested against my shoulder, and I felt her trembling through the thin fabric of her dress. My heart raced. I could smell her perfume, faint and broken by tears, and every nerve in my body screamed with the temptation of the moment. I froze, terrified of moving, terrified of ruining this fragile trust. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. "Because you deserve it," I murmured. The silence that followed was unbearable. She shifted closer, her hand brushing against mine on the couch. The warmth of her skin against mine felt like fire. My pulse thundered in my ears. She tilted her face up, her lips only inches away. I swear for that moment the world disappeared. And then she closed her eyes, not for a kiss, but to rest, to breathe, to let go. Her head slipped back onto my shoulder, her breathing softening. She had fallen asleep against me. I sat there in the dark, my body rigid, every sense lit up by her closeness, my mind torn between desire and fear. I could have moved. I could have shifted her. I could have crossed the line. But I couldn't, not like this. Hours passed. The clock ticked past midnight. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. But inside my small apartment, every second was filled with her presence. Her warmth against my side, her breath on my skin, her secrets heavy in the air. When dawn finally broke, she stirred. Slowly, she lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine in the dim light of morning. There was a softness there I hadn't seen before, something unguarded, dangerous. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, but she didn't move away. She lingered, her hand brushing mine again, her gaze locked to mine as though begging me to stop her or beg her to stay. I swallowed hard, my voice barely audible. "Then why are you?" She didn't answer. Not with words, just with that look, that silence, that unbearable closeness that said everything we couldn't say aloud. And I knew in that moment we were already past the point of no return. The neighborhood had never felt so small. By the end of that week, whispers were already circling. People noticed she came to my place more often, noticed the long silences when we passed by together. And then one evening, everything cracked open. Her husband's voice thundered across the yard. I stood frozen at my window, watching him slam the car door, storming into their house. Minutes later, the shouting started louder than ever. Her cry pierced through the walls, and I felt something inside me snap. I was halfway to her door when I saw it. The porch light flicked on, the door flung open, and she stumbled out, shaken, holding her coat like armor. And then 3 knocks at mine. This time when I opened the door, she didn't ask. She stepped in, slammed it behind her, and pressed her back against it as if holding the world out. Her eyes were wild, burning, desperate. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, breathless. "I can't keep pretending." The words shattered the fragile wall between us. She moved toward me, slow but certain, her eyes locked to mine. Every step she took sent my pulse racing. I could feel the heat radiating off her, the electricity of a choice she was already making. "Do you know what happens if he finds out?" she asked, her voice trembling, but her gaze steady. "I don't care," I said, though my voice shook. "I care about you." Her lips curved, not in a smile, but in something deeper, something dangerous. She reached up, her fingers brushing against my cheek. Light as a whisper. My breath caught. She was so close. I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. Feel her heartbeat in the silence between us. It would have taken one movement, one tiny reckless inch, and everything would change. The air was suffocating with it, every nerve in my body screaming to close the gap. But just as the moment stretched to breaking, she pulled back. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Her hand lingered at my face, then dropped slowly. Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said softly. "I've lived half my life in chains, and now for the first time, I feel free, but freedom has a cost." Her words cut deeper than any kiss could have. I tried to speak to tell her I'd take that cost, but she shook her head. "Don't make promises you can't keep." At the door, she turned, her hand resting on the frame like it always did. But this time, her gaze held mine longer, burning, pleading, daring. "If I walk away now," she whispered, "it's not because I don't want you. It's because I do." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the echo of her perfume, her touch, her words. I stood there breathless, the weight of her choice pressing down on me. She hadn't left him, not yet, but she had left me with something far heavier. The knowledge that we were one step away from crossing a line that would change both our lives forever. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the